Okay, Rexel, it's a pleasure to have you with me. And as I understand it, you are currently out sailing right now in the Panama Canal. Is that correct?
No, sir. We are actually going to Panama, but we're not going under Panama Canal because
Ah,
this
okay.
vessel is a very huge one, which is not allowed to go under Panama. So we did go through south, yes,
Yeah.
through the south, and then going back to top where we can reach Panama for it.
All righty. You got to take the long way. That's great. Before we get into the interviews, or before we get into the questions, Rexel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, okay. I'm Rexel, actually, Rexel Martinez, which I came from the north, which is actually knows, not probably for the seafaring career, knows more. But nowadays it is being, what you call this one, it is being introduced to everyone because of some people's coming on board. And I'm actually current on board Hunter Idun under OSM management, and I'm sailing as a third officer here.
All right. Are you enjoying the life on board and sailing? How long have you been working at sea now?
Okay, actually I've started from 2013. I
Oh,
started
wow.
as cadet. Yeah, but I came from other company and then before coming here in OSM.
All right. And and how do you feel like the life is on board a vessel? I'm sure it's has it been affected at all by the pandemic that's going on, or is it as you're used to? Talk a little bit about that.
No, actually it's very huge. There's a very huge difference when this pandemic is started. It's not like before that before we can do whatever we want and we have the happiness like privilege of being a seafarers going and visiting other countries like you go for a shore leave if you came to the port and for having like for joining the vessel it will be very easy. It's not that you have so many things to undergo before joining.
Mm.
Nowadays it's so very difficult to join, most especially for other peoples that are far from Manila or other peoples that are in the provinces. It's so very difficult for them to travel back to Manila because there are no transportation at all. Some places are locked down and some other places have their own, too much regulations to be passed by before going through out the place where you've been.
Yeah.
And yeah, so sailing on board like this pandemic is not like before. It's like most a little bit frustrating, most especially for the seafarers that who cannot go home and continue their contract over the contract and still working on board and don't know when to leave or when to go back to their family.
Yeah. That's got to be challenging. It's become a lot more complex to travel around the world these days, huh?
Yes,
Um,
it's true, sir.
yeah. So what do you about when you're out sailing? What do you miss the most about being on land? And how long are you typically out at a time when you're away?
So far, the longest one I've ever had is 11 months on board.
Oh,
That
wow.
was, yes, when I was still a ratings. I've been with 11 months on board. But actually on board by that time, there's no pandemic and we are enjoying the place. Like, for example, we're going to port. We have the privilege of going to have our shore leave. We're visiting other places. We're meeting other people.
Mm.
And most especially for the people who are been with you on board, the people like your crew, with the crew you have, there should be a good, what do you call this one, banding with everyone
Mm.
so that the people will not get frustrated or they will not feel like, oh, it's better to go home rather than staying here on board like this because other people is like, it's not that the treatment is not that fair or anything like it's coming like this.
Mm. Yeah, I understand. It's got to be a very different reality when you can't visit all these places. I can imagine that must be one of the benefits, one of the perks of sailing around the world to see all these places. And now you can't do that anymore, I guess, right? You gotta have to stay on the ship when you're in harbor.
Yeah, that is actually true. So that is like what they said that it's a win or lose situation, or I mean, it's a win or lose game when you're going on board because The win thing is you can visit other places by free, and
Mm.
then you can see their culture by any instances and meeting other people. But nowadays, it's not like that. It's not almost the same. Due to this pandemic, you will just stay on board. Like when you started, first time I came on board is like you have stayed there until you finish your contract before going down,
Mm.
before leaving the ship.
I understand. Uh, Talk to me a little bit more about what's going on board the ship. Tell me a little bit about your role and what you do when you're out sailing.
Okay, when we are sailing as a third officer, that will be depends on the company you will be sailing with, because every company has their kinds of job description on each crew, on each rank. But on board this vessel, I'm in charge of the firefighting appliances as a third officer. And after my watch, because I'll be doing at sea, I'm performing a watch from 8 to 12 and night and daytime. After that, I have to start like I have the 2 hours of overtime, have to make rounds, go and check for all the firefighting equipments, make sure that they are up to the standards, and check as per the manuals, manufacturer's manuals. And yes, rest of all the things is during at port stay, we'll be doing the cargo operation. I'll be on the CCR or cargo watch, or either on the bridge as a bridge watch also. And aside from that, we have lots of things like port papers. During arrival on port, you have to ready these port papers for the authorities and everything, like certificates, make sure that they are all fine, they are not expired, and everything is up to date.
Mm.
So far, that is my job here as a third officer in this vessel.
It sounds like a lot of things to keep in check. Um, and you highlight safety as well, as a key component when you're describing your responsibilities. There's a lot of things to keep in order. I understand that with the manuals and making sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to. Nothing's expired. All the safety equipment is there. What do you feel like? What are some of the safety measures that you place the most emphasis on when you're working with safety?
Yeah, first thing on foremost is we have to follow also the company procedures, that we have to do the risk assessment. You have to double check what is the risk, or you have to assess whatever the risk that is to be encountered during the time that you will do the inspection of the equipments.
Mm.
And first thing and foremost, you have to follow the rules and regulations or the company policy that PPA is the main first thing you have to do before performing any job. So make sure that you are safe first, so that it will be safe for the inspection to be carried out and being done properly.
Yeah.
First thing and foremost is to think first the safety, and use the proper PPA that is actually provided to us.
Mm. Understand. Is uh, it sounds like most of the procedures and routines are very well documented in both the company procedures and in the manuals that you have. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to deal with a safety related issue that wasn't described in any of the manuals, or where you had to divert from the procedures?
There is actually a possibilities of doing these things, most especially in real emergency. When it comes to real emergency, there is that instances that everything is not being documented or what. But in dealing with this emergency, first thing and foremost is not to get rattled. Be calm first so that you can think properly. And first thing and foremost is just to assess the situation properly before acting. It's not that you just do whatever you think it is to be done without thinking the risk of anything that you will gonna encounter on that kind of situation.
Mm.
I think this will be done. First and foremost is the thing is you should be start calm, don't panic, or don't so, because too much nervousness or panic can lead to wrong decisions, or you can actually like by doing things in an instant way without even thinking will lead to like different kind of situation.
Mm.
Seems so. It's
Yeah, and that's where your training comes in, right? Your training and
yes,
experience.
sir. Absolutely yes.
Mm. Um, okay, so were you relieved to be on board a vessel as the COVID-19 situation unfolded and it was declared a pandemic? You know, with the lockdowns being introduced, how did that feel being on board a vessel when all this was happening and unfolding in the world?
Actually, it's a little bit frustrating, honestly. I
Yeah.
must been relieved when I was in Southwood. That was actually on December, end of November, going to December. But probably due to this COVID-19, everything is like they said that they cannot fly on the right time. They cannot reach the port before vessel will depart. So everyone is like feeling like, oh my God, when will the time we will gonna go home? When is the time is like this? But it's actually very fine for the others. But for me, it's still okay so far. As long as the people around you is making, I mean, your environment on board is good.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine it. That matters a lot to be around the right people and to be with a good team. That must make a big difference.
Yes,
Um,
actually it is because working on board the vessel is not the work. It makes it differ. I mean, it's not the work that make it very difficult. Work is still the everything. Like even if we are on land, the work is still the same. But it's not the work that making it difficult. It's the people whom you are working with. Most
yeah.
especially when you are on board, away from the family. It's like that on board they should be acting like both family. They're treating everyone should be like in the same way as they are treating their own as their own family. There should
Mm,
not be bias or there should not be like groups dealing with like racism or whatsoever they're doing.
mm, yeah. It's important to have a good team spirit, eh?
Yes, actually so.
Yeah. With so you know the impact that COVID-19 has had on seafarers and the uncertainty with regards to docking and then being able to leave the vessel. I understand that all that's really frustrating. So in that context, like what are your hopes for 2021? How do you hope that the situation is going to evolve and change in the coming months? Are you hopeful?
Yes, actually, I'm still hoping that everything will be gone okay, so that the things like we're doing before will be like back to normal. That crew change will be like it will be very easy, and going or like having a shore leave on the ports will be allowed, and for the peoples will not get frustrated on board while working. It
Mm,
will be like for safety reasons also. No one will get frustrated. No one will get homesick just because of not going home or not being relieved in the right time. So actually, I'm hoping by the next year or by this year, this COVID-19 will be gone so that everything will be gonna back to its normal routine.
mm. I hope so too. We share that hope. It will be great.
Yes, sir, I hope.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you'd like to add, you know, about the year that has passed, about your life on board, or about the work that you guys are doing? Anything else that you think people should know about what it's like to be a seafarer and work on board a ship during these challenging times?
Yeah, okay. From my side, actually, working on board is not that easy. It's a challenging, most especially in part of us seafarers. I mean, female seafarers.
Mm,
I just hope that because nowadays too much seafarers, I mean, too much female seafarers are coming on this field. I hope that everyone should accept the reality that females also can join or can sail on board the ship and do the work, whatever the works we have here on board the vessel. It's
mm,
like they should have I mean, for the male seafarers to treat the female seafarers as their sisters or, yes, as like their sisters.
mm,
They should not be like, not everything that we will. I hope that next day again or next time or this coming days, we will not gonna hear again in other companies that, oh, we are not hiring females because they are like, what they call the what? Cause of fight on boards or it will be a problem on board like this. Most especially because so many female seafarers are now coming on this profession, it will be for the good for them also if the male seafarers can accept the reality that
Mm.
female seafarers can also do the job here on board.
Mm.
So that is
Absolutely.
which I can think of.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And you're the living proof of that, right? You and the other female seafarers we have within OSM Maritime. That's living proof that you guys can do the job really well and
Yes, indeed, sir.
perform well on board.
And then actually, we are not only few. We are already too many. Other nationalities also. We can see in other, I mean, all seafarers page that there are so many seafarers coming in, like female seafarers, I mean.
That's really uplifting to hear. I'm really glad to hear that it's becoming more and more. It's important with diversity. It really is.
Yeah, it is, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Rexel, it was a real pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to tell me and our viewers and listeners a little bit about what life has been like on board. Sailing around the world in the midst of a pandemic and dealing not only with your regular routines, but with all the changes that has entailed for your life and the life of your teammates. So I'd like to thank
Yeah,
you.
it is, sir.
And yeah, it was a pleasure to talk to you. And bon voyage on the way to Panama.
Thank you so much, sir. And it's my pleasure also to join the interview.
All righty. Thanks.